All right, so next up we have Dylan Moriarty. Dylan's a graphics fella over at the Wall Street Journal and a member of the humanitarian OpenStreetMap team. He's previously worked at Development Seed and did freelance mapping in DC. This is his fifth Nasus, and he continues to be delighted by all the kind spirits found therein.
Hey, so my name is Dylan. Because this is PCD, I'm just going to kind of be going through a couple walkthrough examples of how to essentially generate textures. And I'm so incredibly happy that I'm doing this after John Nelson's talk, because that was an amazing lead up to this. Thank you. But so the first slide is kind of boring. You kind of look at that and go, I guess I'm going to view a PowerPoint. With the addition of textures, your brain will be telling you slightly different things. Like you'll be going, oh, it's autumn. Cool, this is an autumn presentation. Also, as like John had mentioned, there's just like a lot of, it's very like evocative, just having like a texture, and it makes it kind of relate more to different things. Textures are evocative and familiar, which gives us a lot of associations to build off of. It's tangible, it's really cool. Like this map style, I want to cut vegetables on it. It's great. So why don't we add this to every map? Well, it's not always preferable because that sort of like emotional bias isn't really useful in a lot of situations. I can't imagine like an election map looking any better with like a concrete texture on it for some reason. And that could also be a distraction when you're actually trying to show. It's also marginally harder to do, and the data might be exhaustive enough as is, which is to say like satellite imagery, for example, or just like really dense data is sometimes complicated enough that it kind of gives a pattern by itself. This is a screenshot, I believe, from part of Daniel Huffman's Superior map, and just the fact that the data is so complex, it kind of creates a really nice pattern by itself. So an additional thing's not really necessary in this case. So why should we use it? Well, it's a tool in our toolbox. It's a thing we can use, and it's great. Just kind of like drop shadow and I guess Comic Sans to some degree. Like there's a time and a place. This is kind of one of those times and places. It's a really cool map. I think Keith Thompson did this, and it's in Atlas of Design. He did a really cool little texture on the water here, which just kind of helps convey the whole idea of it being kind of rusty and rustic. This is a map I did. I don't know how well it will come through on the projectors there, but I really wanted to give it like make it look like a frying pan, so it's got like a little bit of a rugged texture on there. I can kind of see a little better here potentially, but. And then there's also this from Nat Geo, which used kind of like a parchment thing, which I think is kind of common. This kind of makes this digital map look more kind of like an oldie map that you'd actually be holding in your hands kind of thing. So where can you get patterns? You can go to Google image search. Though check to license the image if you're doing it for like professional means. There are like various pattern websites. Lost and Taken is the one I go to, but like you can probably just search Flickr too. Like there's a lot of options out there. Or my personal favorite, just everywhere around you. Because like we all have smartphones probably, and we all have cameras. So like you can literally take a picture of the floor and just make a texture out of it. And that's kind of what I'm going to quickly demo here. So I'm using Photoshop, but I do think that the kind of means of doing this should relate pretty well to other imagery software, potentially. But so this is a picture of the wall over there. And it's kind of a cool texture. Like I can see this being useful for like maybe a land or desert or something. So first step, draw a little rectangle or a little box over that picture. I'm going to make a new file with that. And then we're going to use the offsets to check out how this would actually loop. Because the main issue with just using this raw would be that if we actually set this as like a background pattern, you'd end up with all these little hard lines, and it would look kind of like a chessboard or something. So the offsets. And the way we can fix this now, because we do still have those lines, is taking the clone stamp tool, I believe that's what it's called, pressing Option, and then we can go through. And what this is doing, we're targeting various areas on the picture, and then it's just copying from there and drawing it over. And you can kind of see like the hard lines kind of disappear. And granted, I'm doing this a little fast, so it it's not the best, but if you took time, it'd be a little better. And when you're finished, you should be able to have something that like is very repeatable, and you won't be able to see the lines as hard. Another example of this, cake. We did that. This was the original picture, and then turned it into a texture. And you can't see the lines quite as well. So now this can be used as a pattern on something. So the second thing is you can also do this as vectors. This kind of helps out with vector maps. SVGs are absolutely beautiful, so you can just do a lot with them. So sometimes it's really handy to have a vector pattern. Also, I think it feeds into like some vector maps a little easier. This is kind of, oh, I actually have to put that in still. This is one example I did too, where I found like shape files of the Game of Thrones world and just wanted to make a map out of that. So I did some little drawings for it and turned them into vector graphics to put them on here. And I'll show you how to do that here too quick. So you can actually, I don't know how aware people are of this tool, but this is just a little raster image. Illustrator actually does have a image tracer. It'll convert this into a vector graphic. So you can go to Window, and then Image Trace. And you get all these little fun options. And you can do things like you can tell it color, grayscale, black and whites. You can adjust how many paths it has, how complex you want it to be, and it'll do the magic for you. And so I did a black and white. So that's now a vector. Well, you can also color, trace. Yeah. Now, you know, object, right now it's similar like when you export from QGIS, everything's kind of grouped together. So you go to expand, okay. You can delete that, and we have a little icon now, basically. And then you can do this for a lot of things. Cherubs are probably a less useful application, but like, you can do it for like logos or little other images. I think this also kind of works with patterns. It's a little bit harder to finesse it than Photoshop, but I found if I start in Photoshop doing the thing I showed you earlier with the offsets, that actually works pretty well too. But the image trace also does work for this kind of thing as well. Okay. So we have this nice little SVG version of it now. Yeah. And then I guess like the last thing, oh, wrong one. I did this little drawing earlier, brought it in, SVG'd it. And now I may really easily pull in some like little artwork onto a little slippy map of Montreal. So, yeah. I hope that's useful. Yeah, that's